Shahmi,
Aida,
Alia, Wada.
Assalamualaikum and a very good day to our respected ISB566 lecture. So we are from group D2BA2492B. We will cover the topic 5, which is Islamic Macroeconomics. To begin this chapter, which is Islamic Macroeconomics, it is how economic research and analysis have grown in Western tradition. Islam has never produced a unit theory of political or moral economics. These aren't many Islamic intellectuals who have ever treated economics as a distant subject. Islam simply lacks the comparable to the Western tradition of economics literature that began with Adam Smith and continued through Thomas Malthus, Ricardo, John Stuart Mill, and current times. Islamic economics are a part of the larger body of transactional law as well as the Islamic moral philosophers and theologians' scholasticism. Markets, the nature of value, productivity, utility, efficiency, and growth, to mention a few, are all essential ideas in economic theory. Yet none of these have a common definition or even a general understanding. Economics was not given much place under the Sharia. This was a part of the same tradition of authority tax to the ruler about the importance of a solid currency, about fairness in transaction, and about the dangers of punitive taxes, wherever the themes of commonwealth or welfare of the common person were handled. Next, I will cover 4 subtopics of this chapter, which is macroeconomic goals, content, and scope. And the other subtopic will be covered to the next presenter, who is my groupmates. The first one is increased employment rate. Moreover, the percentage of the population that is judged to be able to work and is actually participating in economic activity is known as the employment rate. Between the ages of 15 and 64, everyone who is not able to work or who is not searching for work is taken into consideration when calculating the employment rate 100%. For instance, homemakers and homemakers trend nowadays. People may raise their level of life through working, which is a significant source of revenue. In addition, it may aid in reducing poverty in a society. To raise the amount of employment in the nation, a strategic move must be made. Promote independent work first. Secondly, the labor information system has to be improved so that individuals may use websites to hunt for available and appropriate. This tactic aids in the job placement, particularly for those living in remote areas. There are more jobs accessible as labor requirements increase. Provide skill development and training, particularly for the underprivileged. Secondly, is about poverty alleviation. Poverty is an intolerable kind of human well-being deprivation that may include both social and physiological deprivation. Lack of access to proper nourishment, healthcare, education, and shelter are examples of fundamental material or biological requirements that are not being met. A person is considered poor if they are unable to get the commodities and services necessary to fulfill these fundamental requirements. Low amount of monetary income and consumption may be used to explain the idea of physiological deprivation to encompass danger, vulnerability, loss of autonomy, helplessness, and a lack of respect for oneself. By raising the employment rate, poverty may be decreased. The idea of work, which enables individuals to raise their income level, may help to understand this. Since individuals have more money to spend on their necessities and desires, higher income result in a higher quality of life. When consumers spend more, companies expand and contribute to the expansion of the national economy. As a result, macroeconomic objectives may be fulfilled. Then, for the scope of control inflation is when the overall level of prices in an economy rises steadily over time. Such situation is referred to as inflation. A greater cost of living is correlated with a rise in inflation, which reduces families' buying power for goods and services. Nominal money is now significantly greater than it was prior to inflation when purchased the same basket of commodities. The reason for inflation is that there was too much demand, which the supply could not keep up with. driving up the cost of commodities. In other words, it results from a rise in total demand that did not coincide with an increase in total supply after the economy had attained full employment. In addition, the increase in manufacturing costs is a contributing factor in the inflation rate increase. In order to pay their manufacturing costs, corporations must raise prices. Monetary, fiscal, and other policies may be used to control inflation. Monetary policy comes first. They foresee future inflation via monetary policy. The monetary policy will raise interest rates if forecasted inflation rises over the target level. Higher interest rates will contribute to slowing the expansion of the economy's aggregate demand. Reduce inflation rate as a result. Fiscal policy is the second. In order to affect the amount of aggregate demand, the government must adjust tax and expenditure rates. Wage control is the third. Limited wage growth may aid in controlling inflation if interest rates are impacted by wages. Next content is growth and stability, whereas economic stability is the state of having a continuously growing and expanding economy. Inflation is the state of having a continuously rising price level throughout time. Inflation may have an impact on economic development by discouraging foreign investors from buying goods or assets because they are more costly than previously. As a result, it will lower the nation's income. On the other hand, a stable economy may also be defined as one in which the macroeconomic indices don't fluctuate significantly or excessively. In order to achieve sustainable and inclusive growth, macroeconomic stability must be maintained. It is so that a stable economy may contribute to high production, enhanced efficiency, and low unemployment. Instability, on the other side, may result in prolonged period of recession or crisis, increasing inflation, and fluctuating currency exchange rates. Consumers' confidence is also affected by economic instability, which also stunts economic expansion and decreases foreign investment. Last but not least, growth and equity is the latest content of this subtopic. Equity denotes justice or parity. To establish fairness in economic development is one of the economic goals. However, the majority of economists see fairness in terms of how equally opportunities and money are allocated across various social groups. If wealth is distributed fairly, the difference between the affluent and the poor is not too wide but yet substantial enough to motivate people to work. Explain in broad terms that individuals of all income levels have equal possibilities to profit from their economic activity, regardless of their degree of wealth. People of all income levels should have equal access to institutions and the job market. The most crucial factor is that their credential and necessary abilities meet the demands, because an equal distribution of income will remove the economic incentive to credit. The quantity of money produced and available for distribution depends on how strong the incentives are to produce it. Due to its seeming contradiction with the supply of economic incentive to earn revenue, complete income equality consequently seems to be an undesirable aim. However, non-discrimination and equal opportunity are the first two principles to follow in order to achieve equity in income distribution. The former demands equal compensation for equal work and limits price variation among services to what is required to ensure their availability in amounts that satisfy societal demands and preferences. The second concept, known as the equal opportunity principle, states that if variation in profession, ability, and training are used to justify inequities, then there must at least be equality of chance to join preferred occupation and acquire highly paid abilities. The provision of necessities to even the most vulnerable people is the third principle or condition of equality.
So we go to the money. The money can be defined by the nature of money, which entail the process of give and takes in the transfer of goods and services with others, has played a vital role in the history of mankind. The reason for its importance is rather simple. Self-sufficiency as a way of life is not really practical. Just imagine if each of us had to handle everything on our own, such as grow grains, vegetable and fruit, serve our clothes, educated ourselves, provide ourselves security and shelter. Since one's knowledge and skill are limited, one can only enjoy limited things in limited quantities and in limited qualities. If one were to produce everything by its own, hence, exchanging goods and services with others is an important process which paves the way for the improvement of one's standard of living or even one's well-being. particularly by obtaining and benefiting from the consumption of goods and services of production that we have no knowledge of. Next, we go to the function of the money. The function of the money is a medium of exchange, unit of account, store of value, and as a standard of different payment. The most important function of money is as a medium of exchange. Hence, some authors would define money as anything that is used as a means of making payment. Once an object ceases to circulate in the exchange process, it ceases to be money. The criteria upon which the performance of a chosen monetary medium should be evaluated are the easiness and effectiveness of its supporting role in the exchanging process. A good medium of exchange is one that allows everyone to exchange his or her goods and services fast and at minimum cost. Next is the unit of account. Pricing is primitive barter is very cumbersome and makes exchange impractical and almost impossible in a market with a rush of goods and services. A good unit of account which enable the market participant to express the value of their product and services in a way that reflect their relative deserved value against other goods and services. Additionally, a good unit of account is one which allows market participants to extract information on the current demand and supply situation. That is, as a store of value, money needs to be a store of value as well. Money must be able to preserve its value in the exchange process and thereby allow one to obtain the same value back when the money is transformed back into real goods and services. If the purchasing power is money can eroded over time, then that money has not been a good store of value. Lastly, money as standard of deferred payment. Money is not only useful for spot transaction, but also in specifying future payment for current purchases. For example, buying now and paying later. This function is the result of money playing the role of as a unit of account and store of value. Consequently, the success of money is executing this function is directly related to its success in performing the others two mentioned function. So we move to the example of the function of the money. Money creation in a conventional banking system. The largest component of the money supply is bank deposit. They are the linkage between the central bank, commercial bank or private banking system, depositors and borrowers, which influences the central bank to supply the money. There is also the interaction between these four groups have direct effect on the money supply. The banking system operates as a fractional reserve system, which only a portion of the bank deposits are held in reserve. Since bank earns profit by lending at higher interest rate than they give on deposit, the reserve requirement is generally a binding limit. So, next is issue of gold dinar. First example, gold and silver coins of various origin were widely in circulation among the Arabs. The Prophet Muhammad encouraged the use of money as a medium of exchange. With the spread of Islam, the dinar was minted in large quantity and gradually displaced the Byzantine gold coins as the major international currency. Dinar refers to gold coins used as a medium of exchange by the Muslim from the beginning of Khulafa al-Rashidin. It was in circulation even before the commencement of Islam. Second example is Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad proposed the introduction of Islamic gold dinar. The formation of extensive infrastructure is an important key to success in the implementation. Effort to make gold dinar and a currency have failed due to infrastructure which cannot be developed. In Islam's opinion, it is one of the way to follow the Sharia as it known as Islamic currency. Next, we go to the issue of the money. Interest on money capital. The Quranic concept of riba differs from exchange or trade in the context of the verse mentioned in the previous pages. Emphasis on trade as the main sources of economic prosperity is well epitomized in the Prophet Muhammad by hadith. Next, the second issue is riba. Riba, the Arabic term for usury, underwent a process of gradual prohibition in the Quran. The focus here will be placed on what Sharia scholar calls riba or riba al-Quran. This is precisely the counterpart of the banking interest rate. That of the issue is time value of money. The concept of time value of money is a basic concept in finance. It says that money today is more valuable than money tomorrow. This is because money loses its value over time as the purchasing power of money keeps falling. For example, in Malaysia, a 10-cent coin could buy 1 cup of coffee in 1970, but today, the same 10 cents cannot buy a cup of coffee. Fourth of the issue is trade. Trade is highly commendable, not only due to the wealth it generates, but also because of the scope of economic independence it extends. The Quran and the Prophet exemplary guidance laid down the criteria legitimate and illegitimate trade practice. And last one is rents. Rents under Ijara could be adjusted periodically. Some scholars objected to this on the basis that this caused garam to the contract. The economic effect remains that an Ijara is still long-term financing with the right to prepay.
Management of inflation or unemployment and preservation of currency exchange rates are the major goals of monetary policy. The first objective is inflation. Inflation targets are possible with monetary intervention. A little inflation is seen to be good for the economy. A contractionary policy can be used to counter rising inflation. Next is unemployment. The level of unemployment in the economy can be impacted by monetary policy. For instance, a monetary policy that is expansionary tends to reduce unemployment because it encourages economic activity and the growth of the labor market. Last objective is currency exchange rate. A central bank can control the exchange rates between its own currency and other currencies by using its financial power. By printing additional money, for instance, the central bank might expand the money supply. The local currency then becomes more affordable in comparison to its overseas equivalent. In order to attain the goals of price stability, full employment, and increase in overall income, monetary policy directs the central bank's money supply. Money serves as a medium of trade, therefore shift in its demand compared to supply need expenditure adjustment. In order to influence the objective over which it has to control, the central bank adjusts some of the financial variables it has control over, such as the monetary aggregate, interest rates, and exchange rates. The central bank's monetary policy tools are based on the economy's level of growth, particularly in its financial sector. Open market operations, interest rates, and exchange rates are the three tools that can be used to implement monetary policy. In the open market, the central bank purchase or sell assets to the banking and non-banking public on behalf of the fiscal authorities. Treasury bills are one such security. When the central bank sells securities, it decreases the supply of reserve, and when it purchases securities, it raises the supply of reserve to be deposit money bank by redeeming the securities, which has an impact on the supply of money. Next, for interest rate, the minimum discount rate is the most favorable interest rate that the central bank will provide to financial stable deposit money banks. The nominal anchor rate that the MRR established as the base for the money market's interest inflation targeting has an impact on the availability of credit saving, which has an impact on the availability of reserve and the monetary aggregate, and investment, which affects full employment and GDP. Lastly, for exchange rate, the monetary base and thus the money supply are both impacted by the balance of payments, which can be in deficit or surplus. The central banks control the exchange rate by purchasing or selling foreign currency to keep it at levels that do not potentially impact the local money supply through the balance of payments and the actual exchange rate. Because of its impact on export growth, the real exchange rate has an influence on the current account balance when it is out of alignment.
Okay, let's move on to the next topic. What is fiscal policy? So basically, according to Harold T. Laswell and Abraham Kaplan, fiscal policy is defined as a plan to achieve a predetermined goal. While based on binary, fiscal policy is thus a tool for managing demand by modifying economic activity through taxation and government spending. Fiscal policy covers expenses and details as well as state revenue through sectors. Government spending has the potential to increase aggregate demand and thus national income. In other words, fiscal policies refer to the action taken by the government to address economic problem by altering the tax system or state spending. The extent of the public sector's involvement in an economy, the level and source of a taxation, and the amount of government spending and how it should be prioritized are all fiscal policy concerns. A country's fiscal policy is implemented through the government budget. National, provincial, states, county, district, and local governments are all examples of governments. However, most fiscal policy literature are focused on central government fiscal action.
What is the objective of fiscal policy in an Islamic economy? Same goes as in a non-Islamic economy: economic stability, growth, and the acceptable distribution, as well as other Islamic economic objectives or law. Among these objectives are the following: justice and equity must be achieved. Islam promotes economic equality and democracy by establishing, among other principles and law, the basic principle that wealth should not be permanent to circulate among the wealthy only. The Holy Quran expressly states this. A second objective is providing community socio-economic needs or socio-economic welfare. In this section, the emphasis on the public's needs and welfare rather than profit. The disabled are honorable provide for by the religions, tax of zakat, and other dues imposed on well-to-do members of society. In addition, the purpose of fiscal policy is to strengthen the nation's economy. Fiscal policy helps stabilize the economy by compensation for international economic fluctuations. If a country's exports decrease and import increase, then its currency will weaken. When its currency weakens, it becomes more expensive for that country to import goods from other nations and less expensive for other countries to export goods there. In a recession, the government should fund public work projects with deficit spending. This is stimulating the economy by putting money into corporations and creating jobs. In Islamic economic dues are primary tool of discretionary fiscal policy. As a result, Islamic economy will use fiscal policy to achieve monetary equilibrium. Besides, what is the revenue of Islamic? The revenue of Islamic state must include zakat, taxes, and tariff. Zakat is a form of charity that must be given to those who are in need. Taxes are collected by the government for public needs like building roads and hospitals. Tariff are taxes on important goods that protect domestic producers from foreign competitions. Even through aforementioned zakat, but not taxes in the Quran or Holy Book of Islam, most Islamic scholars conclude that a government may impose taxes or tariff in addition to zakat if needed. Taxation is permissible under Islamic law and Sharia law. Taxation is imposed under certain conditions, including when the treasury does not have enough money to cover the country expenses. Muslim jurists have historically approved of the imposition of new taxes as long as the expenditure to be funded by the new taxes are essential. So, ghanimah refer to property acquired from non-Muslim following a war. Sedekah is a wealth tax of 2.5% of a person's wealth for 1 year. For the 8 categories mentioned in the Quran, Muslims pay zakat to the state treasury. During this time, this was a significant source of revenue. Sedekah refers to zakat. In this context, zakat is a wealth tax of 2.5% of a person's wealth for 1 year.
which all economics will be integrated into one economy as they come under its jurisdiction. This tax is a wealth distribution tax that is redistributed to poor, needy, debtor, and another group among others, while faith in the enemy booty are surrounded without any fighting. It includes gift to the head of state, enemy tribute, and financial penalties among them, and Zizya, Kharaj, Ushur, treasure trove. Zizya is a fee that non-Muslim pay to live in a Muslim state. Women and children are exempt from paying Zizya, as are those who cannot work or earn a living. During the reign of Umar ibn al-Khattab, there were 3 pence of Zizya depending on how much money a person had. Next, Kharaj was a tax imposed on agriculture and in area outside the Arabian Peninsula that had been conquered by Muslims. The Khilafah relaunched an agriculture regulation by providing grant and low-cost land rental to all of its citizens in order to ensure that its agriculture policy is made. Landowner whose lands has been unused for 3 years will have its confiscated. Next is Ushur. Ushur is a type of retaliatory custom to deliver on goods imported into the Islamic State by foreign machine, as long as the proceeds are used for development and defense of the country, as well as for society welfare. Any type of tax can be delivered under an Islamic system, although it is not permitted to use tax money for personal expenditure of despotic monetary or derivative. There is no reason why other taxes cannot be collected different from the poor. The needy needs immediately help, while the poor have to deal with basic needs on a regular basis. This immediately help is usually found when serious and unexpected incidents like needing immediate medical surgery or funeral costs. Some people are entitled to zakat fund even if they don't qualify as poor or needy. The Prophet Muhammad's statement confirms this. The zakat fund is not to be distributed to the non-destitute as paid for zakat. Mu'alaf, newly converts, and those near to Islam also receive zakat if they request it, because it helps keep them close to Islam. People who travel from one place to another, but only if that journey is legal in Islam, may receive zakat fund before their trip starts. Furthermore, a riqab self is a person who wishes to be free, and zakat is meant to assist him in starting a new life. Next is Gharimin, is a debtor. A zakat eligible debtor is someone who owns debt that benefits the public, such as debt to settle a dispute between 2 parties. And if a person has a debt for his benefit, he can be added to the list of recipients if he does not have enough property to cover the debt. The last zakat recipient is a fisabilillah worker. It includes education, military, and communication distribution, or any work done to obtain Allah's blessing is eligible for the fund. In an Islamic state, all zakat and sadaqah revenue go to the treasury for spending on the poor and needy. Budgets are prepared to meet current expenses on civil administration, fees, debt servicing, and other current expenditure. Capital budget focus on major purchases like land or vehicle. Current budget covers smaller day-to-day expenses. In an Islamic society, there are 2 types of budget: welfare and general. Welfare is funded by zakat and sedekah, meaning that the state allocates money to items mentioned in the Quran. The general budget is funded through taxes and non-taxes revenue, including oil profit. It covers all current and capital expenditure for general and administrative activities. So next is how about public expenditure in Islamic economy. We can see Islam distribution system differs from capitalism and socialism. Capitalism does not prioritize distribution. In Islam, the distribution is defines with moral and ethical value addressing humanity. If there is no fair and equitability distribution of wealth, conflict is likely to arise between have and have-not. Islamic economics aim to ensure that wealth is distributed fairly. The holy books of Islam state, do not withhold your money from circulating among yourself. In Islam, wealth distribution is divided into several categories. If we spend more on education for this year, the amount will be reduced for the following year.